The alarm went off at 5:45. David lay still for a moment, staring at the dark ceiling. Vanessa was asleep beside him, one arm draped across her pillow, her breathing slow and even. He slid out of bed the way he'd been doing for the last 3 weeks. Careful, quiet, like a man sneaking out of his own home. Running shoes by the door, shorts on the chair. He dressed in the hallway with the light off, laced his shoes on the front steps, and stepped out into the cold. October in Pennsylvania. 5:45 a.m. The sky still bruised. The street lamps buzzing. Not a soul in sight. He started slow. He always started slow. His body was 41 and it reminded him every morning. But by the second block, something loosened. His breathing found its rhythm. His feet found the pavement, and the noise in his head, the constant static of everything he should be doing, should be saying, should be feeling. It went quiet. This was the thing no one told you about running. It wasn't about the body. It was about the silence. The first silence he'd felt in 5 years that didn't have someone else's expectations filling it. He ran 1.5 miles, not far, but far enough. When he got back, the apartment was still dark. He stood in the kitchen, sweat cooling on his neck, and poured himself a glass of water. The sunrise was starting, a thin orange line across the rooftops. He stood there and drank the water and watched the light come in. And for a few minutes, he didn't feel guilty about anything. Then Vanessa's voice came from the hallway.
Where did you go?
She was standing in the doorway in her robe, arms crossed, hair pulled back. Not angry, not yet. Something else. Something watchful.
Just a run. I've been going out in the mornings.
Since when?
3 weeks, I think. Maybe a little longer.
3 weeks, and you didn't mention it.
I didn't think it was a big deal. It's just running.
She looked at him for a moment. Then she smiled. The quick one. The one that meant the conversation wasn't over, but she was choosing to end it.
You should be careful. Running on cold mornings can be hard on your knees, especially at your age.
She turned and went to the bathroom. The door clicked shut. David stood in the kitchen with his water and the sunrise and a feeling he couldn't name. Something between relief and a very quiet alarm. He and Vanessa had been together for 5 years, not married. She didn't believe in marriage, she said, because she'd seen what it did to her parents. David had suggested it once, early on. She'd looked at him like he'd said something embarrassing and changed the subject. He never brought it up again. They lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Allentown. David coached varsity basketball at a high school 12 minutes away. Vanessa sold real estate. She was good at it. Good with people, good with spaces, good at making things look better than they were. From the outside, they were solid. The couple at the barbecue who finished each other's sentences, the ones who seemed to have figured it out. But from the inside, there was a geometry to their life that David had learned to navigate without naming. A set of invisible rules. Vanessa decided where they ate, not because she demanded it, because she had opinions, and David didn't. Or he used to, and at some point, the effort of having them became more than the reward. Vanessa decided who they spent time with. Her friends, her colleagues. His friends had fallen away slowly, the way things do when every plan requires a conversation and every conversation has a cost. Vanessa decided when something was a problem and when it wasn't. If David was upset, it was because he was being sensitive. If Vanessa was upset, it was because David had done something wrong. There was a ledger, and it always balanced in her favor. David didn't know what any of this was called. He just knew that somewhere in the last 5 years, he'd gotten smaller. Not physically. Something else. Like the volume on who he was had been turned down one click at a time until he couldn't hear himself anymore. The panic attack happened in September. Standing in the gym before practice, clipboard in his hand, 20 kids on the bleachers. His chest locked, his vision narrowed. He thought he was having a heart attack. The ER doctor said it was anxiety. Have you been under any unusual stress? David almost laughed. What stress? His life was fine. Vanessa told him it was fine. But he made an appointment with a therapist anyway. Dr. Patel, a small office near the campus. David went once a week and talked about things he didn't know he was carrying. The running started after that, then the cooking, small things, eggs in the morning, a chicken breast for dinner, eggs he used to make before Vanessa, things she'd quietly taken over because David always burned the rice or never seasoned anything. He wasn't trying to make a statement, he was just trying to find the edges of himself again. But every edge he found seemed to press against something in Vanessa. It started with the gym. David had mentioned wanting to use the weight room at school. Nothing major. Just 30 minutes after practice.
You're going to start working out now? At 41?
It's not like I'm training for anything. Just want to feel better.
I just think it's a little obsessive. That's all. You've been running. Now the gym. When do we spend time together?
We spend every evening together.
Yeah, with you on the couch, half asleep by 9. That's not quality time, David.
He didn't go to the gym that week. The conversation had been short, almost nothing, but it sat on his chest like a hand pressing down. The message was clear, even if the words were reasonable. Don't do this. He brought it up with Dr. Patel the next session. Dr. Patel asked a question David couldn't answer. Who decided that taking care of yourself is selfish? David stared at the ceiling. He knew who. He went to the gym the following Monday. Vanessa didn't say anything when he got home. She was on the couch, scrolling her phone. She didn't look up. Didn't ask about his day. The silence was specific, surgical, the kind designed to make you wonder what you'd done wrong. David heated up leftovers and ate alone at the kitchen table. The next morning, he ran. 2 weeks later, he cooked dinner. Actually cooked. Salmon, roasted vegetables, a salad with the vinaigrette his mother used to make. He set the table for 2. Vanessa came home, looked at the table, and paused.
What's all this?
I made dinner. Thought it'd be nice.
You made dinner. You never make dinner.
I used to. Before.
Before what?
He didn't answer because answering would mean saying before you, and he wasn't ready for that conversation.
I just feel like cooking. That's all.
She sat down, she ate, she said it was good, but something in her face had shifted. Not softened, sharpened, like she was looking at something she needed to figure out.
Are you going through something?
No. I just cooked dinner.
Because between the running and the therapy and now this, I'm just trying to understand. It feels like you're becoming a different person.
You're becoming a different person. She said it the way someone might say, you're developing a symptom. Not curiosity, diagnosis.
I'm just taking care of myself, Vanessa.
I didn't say you weren't. I'm just noticing.
She helped clear the dishes. The conversation was over, but the noticing had begun. And what Vanessa noticed was not David getting healthier. What Vanessa noticed was David getting further away. David's sister Grace lived 40 minutes north, in a farmhouse outside Bethlehem that she bought after her divorce. She kept a garden, 2 cats, and a quiet life she'd rebuilt from scratch. Grace was 12 years older than David. She'd been married to a man named Victor for 11 years. David remembered Victor as charming, loud, the center of every room. Grace was quiet during those years, smaller somehow, always deferring, always translating Victor's moods for the rest of the family. Then Grace left, and for a while, David didn't understand why. Victor seemed fine, successful, attentive even. It took years for David to understand what Grace had been living in. And now, sitting on her porch with coffee on a Sunday afternoon, he was beginning to understand it in a way he wished he wasn't.
So, tell me what's been going on.
I don't even know where to start. I feel like I'm going crazy.
Start with what changed.
I did. I changed. I started running, going to therapy, cooking, small stuff. And Vanessa, she's losing it. Like I'm doing something terrible to her by existing differently.
What does she say?
She says I'm obsessive, that I'm becoming a different person, that I don't prioritize us anymore. Last week, she cried for an hour because I went for a run instead of watching a movie with her. An hour, Grace. Over a 30-minute run.
What did you do?
I apologized. I always apologize. And then I felt terrible for the rest of the day. Like I'd done something wrong by going for a run at 6 in the morning while she was asleep.
Grace took a sip of her coffee, set it down, looked at her brother with the kind of steadiness that comes from having survived something.
Can I tell you something I wish someone had told me 15 years ago?
Yeah?
When I was with Victor, I stopped doing everything that made me me. I stopped gardening, stopped seeing my friends, stopped reading. Because every time I did something for myself, he made me feel like I was abandoning him. Not with words, always. Sometimes with silence, sometimes with that look. You know the one.
I know the one.
And I believed him. I believed that taking care of myself was a form of neglect, that my job was to make him comfortable. And the smaller I got, the happier he was. Or not happier, more settled. Like I was in the right place, in his orbit, reflecting him back at himself.
Ah, reflecting him back at himself. What do you mean?
I mean, he didn't love me, David. He loved what I did for him. I made him feel important, smart, needed. When I looked at him, I saw the man he wanted to be, and he needed that. Desperately. Not love, not partnership. He needed a mirror.
David was quiet.
And the moment I started looking at myself instead of at him, the mirror turned around, and he couldn't stand what he saw.
That's exactly what's happening. When I run, when I cook, when I say no to something, it's like I'm breaking something in her. But I'm not doing anything to her. I'm just doing things for me.
I know. And that's the part that'll break your heart. Because you'd think that someone who loves you would be happy when you grow. You'd think they'd cheer you on. But some people don't want you to grow. They want you to stay.
Why?
Because your growth is her problem, not because you're doing anything wrong. Because when you start loving yourself, you stop being useful in the way she needs you to be. You stop being the mirror that reflects back the person she wants to see. And without that reflection, she has to face herself. And there's something there she can't look at.
David stared at the tree line. The oaks were bare. November was coming.
She told me I've changed. Like it's an accusation.
Of course you've changed. That's what healing looks like. The question isn't why you changed. It's why she needs you not to.
The words landed in David's chest, heavy and true. He drove home that evening with the radio off. He thought about what Grace had said, about mirrors, about what it means to love someone who doesn't want you to grow, about the difference between I need you and I need you to stay the same. When he got home, Vanessa was on the couch. She looked up when he walked in.
Where were you?
Grace's.
You've been spending a lot of time there lately.
She's my sister.
I didn't say she wasn't. You used to spend Sundays with me.
The pull was there, familiar, strong. The gravitational force of her disappointment tugging him back into the shape she needed. Oh, something had shifted. A degree, a fraction, just enough.
I'm going to keep seeing Grace, Vanessa. And I'm going to keep running. And going to therapy. These things are important to me.
Vanessa's face did something complicated. A flash of surprise, then something harder.
So what am I supposed to do while you're off finding yourself?
You could find yourself too.
He didn't mean it unkindly, but the words hit something. Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. She turned back to her phone. The conversation was over. But the silence that followed was not the surgical kind. It was the stunned kind. The kind that comes when someone says a truth neither person was expecting. That night, while David slept, Vanessa lay awake. She stared at the ceiling the way David used to, the fan turning, the dark pressing in. She felt something she couldn't name. Not anger. Anger was familiar. Anger she could use. This was different. This was a hollowness, like someone had removed a load-bearing wall and the structure was still standing, but you could hear it creaking. She thought about the salmon dinner, the running shoes by the door, the Sunday visits to Grace, the way David had started saying no to small things, not defiantly, not cruelly, just calmly. Each no felt like a hand pulling away from hers, not violently, gently, which made it worse, because you can fight violence. You can't fight gentleness. She got up and went to the bathroom, turned on the light, looked at herself in the mirror. She was beautiful. She knew that. She'd always known that. It was the first thing people told her and the thing she counted on when everything else felt unstable. But tonight, the face in the mirror didn't feel like enough. Not because something was wrong with it, because there was no one in the other room telling her it was right. David used to look at her like she was the most important thing in the room. She could feel it, a warmth, a gravity, and she needed that. Not the way you need food or air, the way a building needs a foundation. Without it, everything above it starts to shift. She turned off the light and went back to bed. In the morning, David's shoes were already gone. The escalation came in stages, each one slightly louder than the last. Stage 1 was withdrawal. Vanessa went quiet, not the comfortable quiet of two people who don't need to fill the space, the performative quiet, the kind that says, I'm here, suffering, and it's your fault. David noticed. He almost broke, almost said, what's wrong and what did I do and I'm sorry? The old script, the one he'd been reading from for 5 years. Instead, he made himself breakfast and went to work. Stage 2 was guilt. Vanessa started mentioning everything she did for the relationship, every dinner she'd cooked, every time she'd rearranged her schedule, every sacrifice, real or inflated.
I moved to Allentown for you. I gave up my office in Philly. I reorganized my entire life around this relationship. And now you can't even watch a movie with me on a Sunday night?
I'm not saying I can't. I'm saying I want to visit my sister sometimes too.
Fine, go. I'll just be here, like always.
The ledger, the running tally of what she'd given and what she was owed. David had seen it before, but never this clearly. Every kindness was an invoice, every sacrifice a debt to be collected when he stepped out of line. Stage 3 was love bombing. Sudden warmth, breakfast in bed, a weekend trip suggestion. Vanessa in a new dress, leaning against the counter, smiling the way she had in the beginning.
Let's do something fun this weekend. Just us. Like we used to.
And part of David wanted to. The part that remembered the first year, when she made him feel like the most interesting man alive. When her attention was sunlight, and he'd grown toward it without thinking. But he recognized it now. The pattern. Withdrawal, guilt, warmth. Withdrawal, guilt, warmth. A cycle designed not to connect, but to recalibrate, to pull him back to the center of her orbit. He went on the trip. They had a nice time. And when they got home, he went for a run Monday morning, and the cycle began again. Stage 4 was rage. It happened on a Thursday. David had told Vanessa he was going to his high school's alumni dinner. Alone. He hadn't asked permission, hadn't couched it in apology. Just said it.
You're going alone without me.
It's a work thing. Coaches, former players. It's not really a +1 situation.
Everything's a +1 situation when you're in a relationship, David. Unless you don't want people to know you're in one.
That's not what this is.
Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, you've been pulling away for months. The running, the cooking, the therapy, the sister visits, and now you're going to events without me. Who even are you?
I'm trying to be myself.
Well, yourself is a stranger, and I don't like him.
The words hung in the air. Vanessa was breathing hard. Her hands were shaking. Not from anger, David realized. From something deeper. Something that looked for just a moment like fear. But the fear didn't stay. It never stayed. It transmuted into something she could use.
You know what? Go. Go to your dinner. Go to your sister's. Go run at 5 in the morning like some middle-aged cliché. But don't pretend this is self-care. This is you checking out. This is you leaving without having the guts to actually leave.
She went to the bedroom. The door closed, not slammed, clicked. Which was worse? A slam is honest. A click is controlled. David stood in the living room and did not apologize. It was the first time in 5 years he'd stood in the aftermath of her anger and not tried to fix it. And the silence that followed was not empty. It was full of everything he'd been too afraid to hear. He went to Grace's the next Sunday, earlier than usual. She was in the garden, pulling dead tomato plants from the soil.
You look like you haven't slept.
She's getting worse. Every time I do something for myself, she escalates. It started with comments, then guilt, then she was nice for a while, and now?
Now she's angry.
Furious. She called me a stranger, said she doesn't like who I'm becoming. And the thing is, Grace, I'm just going for runs. I'm just cooking dinner. I'm just saying no sometimes. How is that something to be furious about?
Grace wiped her hands on her jeans and sat on the porch steps. She patted the spot beside her. David sat.
Let me tell you something about people like Vanessa. And I can say this because I lived with one for 11 years. They need something from you. Not love, something deeper. They need you to be their mirror, to reflect back the version of themselves they can live with.
There's this idea in psychology. The therapist Kohut called it narcissistic supply. It's the fuel, the validation, the attention, the compliance. It's what keeps their picture of themselves intact. And for 5 years, David, you've been her supply. Not because you're weak, because you're kind. And kind people make the best mirrors.
Supply. That's what I've been.
When you ran in the mornings, you weren't reflecting her anymore. You were looking at yourself. When you cooked dinner, you weren't serving her needs. You were serving your own. When you said no, you were telling her that you exist outside of her. And for someone whose entire sense of self depends on you existing inside of her, that's not just uncomfortable.
It's a threat.
Jung talked about this. He called it individuation. Becoming who you actually are. He said it's the privilege of a lifetime. But for someone like Vanessa, your individuation is her catastrophe. Because the person she built, the one who made her feel important, who deferred, who made himself small, that person is disappearing. And without him, she has to look in the mirror and face whatever's there.
What's there?
That's the question she's been running from her whole life. And the answer is the part that'll break your heart. Because it might be nothing. Not nothing as in empty. Nothing as in, she never built anything underneath the performance. The charm, the confidence, the way she walks into a room and everyone turns, that's real. But it's also all there is. There's no self beneath the self she shows people. And when you stop being her audience...
The show has no one to play to.
And that's what breaks. Not her heart. The structure. The whole architecture of who she thinks she is. It needs your attention to stay standing. Your admiration. Your smallness. Take that away, and the building doesn't just feel empty. It starts to lean.
David sat with this for a long time. The garden was still. The afternoon light was golden and tired.
I feel guilty. That's the worst part. I feel like I'm doing this to her, like my getting better is making her worse.
I know. I felt that too. For years after I left Victor, I felt like his pain was my fault. Like I'd broken something by leaving. But I didn't break him, David. He was already broken. I was just the glue holding him together. And glue isn't a life.
She says I've changed.
You have changed, and you should be proud of that. Not everyone has the courage to change when changing means losing the thing that kept you comfortable.
She's not comfortable.
No, she's terrified. And I'm sorry for that. I genuinely am. But her terror is not your cage.
Though late, they sat on the porch until the sun was low and the shadows were long. David went home. The apartment was dark. Vanessa was in the bedroom, door closed. He could hear the TV through the wall. Some reality show. The sound of other people's drama filling the space where theirs used to live. He went to the kitchen, made a sandwich, sat at the table, and ate it slowly. He thought about what Grace had said about the mirror, about supply, about the building that needs an audience to stand. And he thought about the Vanessa he'd fallen in love with, the one who made him feel seen, who asked about his day and actually listened, who put her hand on his shoulder when he was tired and said, "I've got you." Had that been real? Some of it, maybe, in the beginning, before the arrangement settled, before the invisible contract was signed, before love became a transaction and tenderness became a tool. He didn't hate her. That was the thing that made this so hard. He just couldn't be her mirror anymore because every morning he looked in one of his own and he was starting to like what he saw, and liking himself shouldn't cost her everything. But it did. He put his plate in the sink, walked to the bedroom door, listened. The TV was off now. He could hear her breathing, quick, shallow, not sleeping. He almost knocked, almost said, "Are you okay?" Almost became the version of himself she needed, the one who sacrificed his edges to smooth hers. He didn't knock. Not because he didn't care, because caring for someone and disappearing for someone are not the same thing, and he'd spent 5 years confusing them. He went to bed in the guest room, first time in 5 years. The pillow smelled like laundry detergent and nothing else. No perfume, no shared warmth. Just clean cotton and the sound of his own breathing. He set his alarm for 5:45. The next morning, he ran. Same route, same streets, same cold air burning his lungs. But when he reached the corner of Maple and 8th, the spot where he usually turned around, he didn't stop. He kept going. Not because he was proving something. Not because he was running from something. He kept going because for the first time in 5 years, he wanted to see what was past the place he always stopped. And the morning opened up around him, block after block, houses he'd never noticed, a bakery with its lights just coming on, a woman walking a dog that looked too big for her, a kid waiting for a school bus, backpack dragging on the sidewalk. The world was enormous, and he had been living in a very small room inside it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't look at it. He knew who it was. He knew what it said. Some version of, "Where are you?" or "When are you coming back?" or "We need to talk." He would talk. Later, he would face whatever came next with his eyes open and his feet on the ground. But right now, for these 20 minutes, he was just a man running, not away from anything, toward himself. And somewhere behind him, in the apartment with the dark bedroom and the television that filled the silence and the mirror that no longer reflected what she needed to see, something was breaking. Not because David had done anything cruel, but because he had done the one thing a narcissist cannot survive. He had started loving himself, and the mirror she'd been looking into for 5 years had quietly turned around. And what she saw, what she'd been building her whole life to never have to see, was nothing but herself. Standing there, alone, without an audience, without a reflection, without anyone to tell her who she was. And for someone who had never learned who she was without being told, that silence was not peace. It was the sound of a building with no foundation, finally standing on its own and beginning to lean.